everyone. Square numbers are worth spending your time on. You're going to eventually use them so often that being able to recite them from memory will be extremely helpful. In this lesson, we'll learn what square numbers are, why they are called square numbers, and how to work them out. Let's take a look. If you look at the diagrams in front of us, you'll see that they're big squares made up of smaller squares. Now, the way we work out how many small squares make up the big squares is by multiplying the amount of small squares going across by the amount of small squares going up. So if we look at this first one, we've got one square going across and we've got one square going up. So we can write 1 times 1. So there's a total of 1 square. And that's correct. You can see there's only 1 square in that diagram. Let's do the next one. There are 2 squares going across and there's 2 squares going up. So it's 2 times 2, which gives us 4. So that means there are 4 small squares in total, which is true. You can see in the diagram, there's only 4 squares. For the next one, to work out how many small squares there are, we go, how many are there? How many small squares are going across times how many small squares going up? So that's 3 times 3, which gives us 9 small squares in this case. And for this last one, 4 squares going across times 4 up gives us 16 small squares in total. Now these numbers, 1, 4, 9, and 16, are known as square numbers because if we draw them, they form squares, as we can see in these diagrams above. Now, any number multiplied by itself, as we can see what we did in these examples, will give us a square number. It's important to know, though, that there's another way of writing a number multiplied by itself. So instead of writing it as 4 times 4, we can write it as 4 to the power of 2. Instead of writing 3 times 3, we can write it as 3 to the power of 2. This one we can write as 2 to the power of 2. This little 2 at the top means to the power of. And this one we can write 1 to the power of 2. Now this little 2, the power of 2, means take this number and multiply it by itself. It doesn't mean 4 times 2. That would give us a very different answer. It means take 4 and multiply by itself. So it's 4 times 4. Now, another way of saying the power of 2 is the word squared. So this, instead of saying 4 to the power of 2, we can also say 4 squared. This we can say, instead of 3 to the power of 2, we can say 3 squared. This one, 2 squared, 1 squared. So squared and power of 2 mean exactly the same thing. And don't forget, they mean take this number here and multiply it by itself. Any number multiplied by itself or squared makes a square number. Let's look at a few more examples. If we look at these 3 examples over here, we can either say 6 to the power of 2, 9 to the power of 2, 7 to the power of 2, or we can say 6 squared, 9 squared, 7 squared. The more common way is to use the word squared. Now remember, squaring a number means to multiply the number by itself. It doesn't mean times 2. So when you see a sum like this, squaring, to find the answer in your mind, you're thinking for this first one, 6 squared, you're thinking 6 times 6. That's how you work out the answer. And we know that 6 times 6 is 36. For 9 squared, you're thinking in your mind 9 times 9. You're not thinking 9 times 2. Remember, you're taking the 9 and multiplying it by itself. 9 times 9, and your answer is 81. And then this last one, 7 squared, in our minds we're thinking 7 times 7, which is 49. Okay, don't forget, don't get confused with this little power. It doesn't mean times 2. It means take the bottom number, the big number, and multiply it by itself. Now, all of these numbers in the answers, no matter which number you square or multiply by itself, these answers are all square numbers, which means that if we draw them, they'll form squares. Okay, now that you know how to create square numbers, it's time for you to practice some yourself. As you can see, there's a few here for you to try. Remember, this I think column is only here to help you while you're trying to embed the skill in your brain. You're trying to create this pathway of understanding in your brain. Eventually, you'll do this part in your head. You won't need to write it down. But for now, it's very useful to write it down. What you're going to do is pause this video, fill in all the answers, and then come back to the video to check if you got them correct. Let's check your answers. If you know your tables, squaring numbers is easy. Keep practicing them so that eventually you memorize the square numbers. Once you have a good grasp of square numbers, move on to the lesson on cube numbers next because there's similar concepts. I'll see you there. This lesson comes from the Tables Training That Packs a Punch series. The full series with practice exercises and bonuses is available from aligerous.online. Click the link in the description below.